using shocks that were meant for Harley Davidson on a Yamaha Vmax. The first generation of Vmax is not getting any younger. The design was done in the early 80s, and the first unit came out of production 40 years ago this year. So in 1985 until 2007, this first generation was produced, and 2007, just to put this into perspective, is 18 years ago. So our bikes are getting older and parts are sometimes getting more difficult to obtain, whether it is from the dealer, from Yamaha themselves, or for aftermarket parts. I wanted to upgrade the rear suspension on my 97 Vmax, and the progressive suspension 444s were very good candidates. After looking online, I couldn't find any stock, and I discovered that they were discontinued. Progressive suspension are no longer selling 444s that are dedicated for the Vmax. Big thanks to the online Vmax forum, where a member came out with a solution to this. By looking closely at the specs of the 444s onto Progressive Suspension website, he discovered that other equivalent models for Harley Davidson could fit the Vmax. I downloaded the data from Progressive Suspension website and put it into a table. You can access the link to the table into the video description. Into this data, you'll observe that the stock model that was proposed for Vmax is very, if not identical in specs to this one from Harley Davidson, the 4020B. B for black and C for chromed. Now I went ahead and ordered a set of these shocks, and I'm about to install them on the Vmax. Let's see if they fit. So as a starting point, we'll be measuring the dimension of these attachment points on the shock, the stock shocks. So let's start with the width. So these are about 20 millimeter wide. And I can see this is probably age, but this bushing has been migrating outwards this way. So 20 millimeter at the bottom, and we're just about the same at the top. And inside diameter, we are looking for something that is close to 14. Yeah, so 14 millimeter, 1405. Same thing, top and bottom. So 1408, 1405 millimeter inside diameter. This is what we're looking for by 20. Both shocks, so on the Harley model that I ordered and the stock one, they're both 13 inches in length. Now let's see the 444. So obviously there are no bushings right now. This is simply the, this is the rubber bushing, the polymer bushing. There's no metal bushing yet. No metal insert. So this is at 15, yeah, 515 in there. This is polymer. 15 millimeter is what we have as an inside diameter. What we want is 14. So what are we going to do? Let's bring the hardware that was supplied with the 444s. Inside the box came a bunch of different bushings. Let's measure a few to see if we have something that could fit the Vmax. They're going to be 13 inside. And these are a lot smaller. So obviously we're not going to get our 13 with this, our 14, I'm sorry. And everything else is pretty much, so these are quantity 4, 2 per shocks. So all 13. So we need something that will make the bridge. I don't want to install it directly on rubber because as the shock is going to actuate up and down, the lug from the motorcycle may rub and the friction may eat through this this rubber piece. I know it's going to take time. I could probably get away by installing them like this for a while, but that's not how I want to do it. Let's try and find a proper way to do this. Since these are rubbery bushings, I hope I could press something in it that might be over 15 millimeter. Remember that we had 15 inside diameter right here. So I found on Amazon, and I'll put the link into the video description, these metal bushing that are coated with, I guess this is copper. So they're copper coated bushings, and their dimension is what we're looking for, 14 inside, just like our shock, and outside is 16. So with the 16, I know I have 1 millimeter of compression that will occur inside this rubber bushing, but this is rubber. So let's try to press this in. Just before we start, I forgot to mention that these bushings are in fact 20, almost 20 millimeter wide. So pretty much what we need. Okay, so we'll start with a flat surface. Get the shock right here. There's one end on the shock that seems to be better for entry. You see over here, there's this is pretty sharp, and on the other side, it's round. There's a small fillet right here. So I'm going to use this end like this to simply initiate the entry of the bushing. And now that it is secured in, we're going to complete the pressing of the bushing inside the shock using a C-vise. And there we go. Let's have a look at this. So we are flush on this side, and there's a small gap on the other side. So I'll try my best to place it in center, but I think this is going to be plenty for what we're trying to do. Yeah, that's already better. Now that both ends have bushings inside, we're going to go and install them on the bike. Removing the stock shock is pretty simple. So 2 fasteners, 1 17 millimeter nut at the bottom that we simply take out. Be careful not to drop the washer. And at the top, 10 millimeter screw is holding the shock at the top. Now, one thing that I observed when removing the stock shock is that if you notice over here on that decorative washer, well, I don't know how to say it, but this piece of aluminum right here that is being held by the 10 millimeter screw. So this thing is compressing the inner bushing of the shock. If you observe on this surface, you can clearly see some marks left by this inner bushing. So this inner bushing is solidly attached. It's molded. It's one piece with the rubber inside the shock and this external adapter or this external lug on the shock. So when the suspension is traveling up and down, the shock will slightly move like this. So this rotation of the shock is being managed and contained by the flexibility of the rubber. Our installation is going to be slightly different. We're not going to be able, or I don't think that we're going to be able to squeeze the tiny, thin bushing that we've installed before. So we'll see how that turns out. Let's take this one out and slide the 444 in. So to remove the shock, you'll want to slowly slide it out and make sure that the top slides furthermore first. You'll want to take out the top first, and then you'll be able to tilt the shock backward and take out the other one if you still have the stock exhaust, like I do. I'm prying it outwards a bit, and then the back. Here we have it. Let's put in the new one. Now, because I'm expecting some rotation movement on these lugs, and the bearing is not going to be squeezed solidly, so it might pivot in there. I like to apply just a tiny bit of bearing grease just to avoid excessive friction. Because we are proud of using progressive suspension, super hot technology, we're going to put that nice logo outwards. And you'll notice that on the bushing side as well, they're different. So the inside has part number. I don't want that. I want sticker out. So I'm going to be using the same philosophy. Slide bottom in first. Squeeze a bit outward like that. And put it in. like this. Now remember what we just talked about, this internal bushing. On the stock assembly, the stock bushing is flush to the rubber bushing, which means that when I'm going to put this down, that big washer is going to both grab onto the bushing and onto the frame, locking and compressing everything down solidly. Now on this assembly, as you see it, I probably have like a 1.5 millimeters of rubber sticking out. Hopefully I can try to compress that millimeter all the way down so I can reach my big washer here onto the frame. Worst case scenario, or I think this is even what we're gonna have to do, I'm gonna put a washer right here to make the bridge between that bottom surface and this thing. Let's see if I can torque this screw down hard enough to meet the aluminum face to the metal bottom, or the metal lug right here. Yo, this is rubber, 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 rubber. No, this is way too much. I'm afraid I'm gonna cut the rubber lips with in between the two metal piece. Nah, this is not good. Okay, so we'll put a small washer in to act as a filler and see how it reacts. All right, so I found some washers into my my stash that are just about the same diameter as our bushings that we pressed in. They're not quite meeting the outside, but they're not going in, and they might be the right distance that we need to make the bridge between that metal lug and our aluminum piece. So let's try that. Aha! Oh yeah. Now this is meeting the frame and the shock is firmly attached in between. I think we have a winning solution. This looks pretty good, pretty solid. This is great. So, but I'm very curious to see people that I've bought 444s, the real 444s that were intended for the Vmax, the ones I can't remember the part number. I think they were 4212. What kind of bushings did they came with? How was the installation on the Vmax? Have you encountered what I just went through, or you just, I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I'd like to know if I'm doing it right or if what I discovered make any sense. So we'll do the same for the bottom part, which means this tiny washer first, our big washer holding, and then the nut. Yeah, this is solid. Oh yes. There we have it. Good, it works. So that completes the assembly. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful. I'm going way too out of bounds, trying to find problems where there aren't any. Anyways, I'm always happy to read you. Thank you. See you soon.